Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here for this fireside chat. Today, we're celebrating our 1-year anniversary. That's right, Fire Drill Fridays is 1 year old, and today I'm going to reminisce with Annie Leonard, Director of Greenpeace USA. We're going to give you a behind-the-scenes view of the origin story and how it's grown to the incredible movement that it is today, thanks to you and to Greenpeace. But first, our good news. Canada's largest bank, the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, becomes the first major Canadian bank to refuse to fund oil and gas drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. Yay! Their statement reads, quote, "Due to its particular ecological and social significance and vulnerability, RBC will not provide direct financing for any project or transaction that involves exploration or development in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge." Yay! And some of you are from Canada, so stop into RBC and tell them thank you. That is such good news. I am so excited to have Annie Leonard with me today. And for those of you who don't know, Annie is Executive Director of Greenpeace USA. And I swear, one of the smartest things that I have done in my life was to call Annie when I decided I wanted to move to DC for 4 months for what became Fire Drill Friday. Most of you, I'm sure, know about Greenpeace, but just in case, like for Serbia, maybe you don't know about Greenpeace. It's an independent global organization. It's an environmental organization which uses research, creative communication, nonviolent direct action, and people power to advance environmental solutions. It is the bravest of organizations and really knows how to get people's attention and win battles. And that's why I called Annie. Before she took the lead at Greenpeace, Annie made a hit 20-minute web film called The Story of Stuff that takes viewers on a tour of the often hidden environmental and social costs of our consumer-driven culture. The Story of Stuff film has generated over 40 million views in more than 200 countries and territories since its launch, making it one of the most watched online environmental themed films to date and sparking a much needed conversation about patterns of consumption today. Because it stirred so much interest, she followed it up with a book of the same name. Annie is a most remarkable organizer and administrator. The two don't usually go together, so it's pretty remarkable. She's utterly strategic, creative, kind, and it's been, and I hope will continue to be, an amazing learning experience for me to work with her. But before I bring her on, here is a short video highlighting some of Fire Drill Friday's powerful movements, from the Capitol steps to the streets of Los Angeles to streaming live, over 6 million viewers worldwide. Fire Drill Fridays has built an incredible movement, and we're going to keep building it. So let's watch.
Are you angry? I hope you are frigging angry.
We hold the power to change the political calculus in America.
We have power. We have so much power.
Change is coming by disaster or by design.
I knew that the person to call was Annie Leonard.
Together, we are going to fight the climate crisis with everything that we have, because what is at stake is everything that we love, and together we will win. Thank you so much.
Our job as celebrities is to point, and this is what we're pointing at.
The seas are rising, and so are
go raise a ruckus.
This really marks the escalation of Fire Drill Fridays.
So we need to ramp up voter turnout in a way that we never have before.
And voting is the only way that we can compete with the unlimited political spending of fossil fuel interests.
We must be in solidarity. See you next time. Could you see how much fun we had? It was so joyful and so much fun. And welcome to Annie Leonard.
Thank you, Jane. A happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Annie. It was a year ago. It was Labor Day last year. I was in Big Sur with my friends, Rosanna Arquette and Catherine Keener. And I was kind of depressed because I knew that I wasn't doing enough about the climate crisis. I mean, I'd done all the individual things, but I knew there was more that I can do. And I was reading Naomi Klein's wonderful book called On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal. And that book just set me on fire. The way she talked about the science, it was so clear. You know, it said, we have to cut our fossil fuel emissions in half by 2030. Well, that's very clear. Whoa, we don't have a lot of time. She talked about the Green New Deal in a way that really helped me understand why it was so important to center justice. She talked about Greta Thunberg in a way that really made me sit up and take notice. And Greta Thunberg, she quoted Greta as saying, we have to get out of our comfort zone. And I thought, yes, I'm going to move to DC. I'm going to move there for a year and camp out. And what do I do? How do I do it? And so I called Annie. I knew Annie could help me do it. You remember that?
I remember that very well. I was in my kitchen right downstairs. I remember you called and you said, I want to do everything to fight climate change. And I remember being totally thrilled that an activist of your stature wanted to throw down on climate. But what I didn't realize, I can tell now looking back, when you said, I want to do everything I can to fight climate change, I didn't realize you actually meant you want to do everything that you can. I think probably we hung up from that first phone call and you bought a plane ticket right away, right?
I think so, yes. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't go for a year because I had to come back to start filming Grace and Frankie. So I found out that I had 4 months to move to DC and do this. We didn't quite know what this was yet. And that's when, so I arrived in DC and you arranged for an amazing meeting with all these leaders of environmental groups. Talk about that and why you thought that was so important.
So that was really important because you could just come to DC and do something by yourself, and that would be Jane Fonda doing something courageous, or we could engage lots of allies, and then it could be a boost to the whole movement. And to change everything, we need everyone. So that's what we decided to do. So we brought together a bunch of allies in DC. You can see pictures of them there. We have Eric Pica, the head of Friends of the Earth. We have Kea Chatterjee, the head of Climate Action Network. We have somebody from Sunrise. We had Reverend Yearwood came from Hip Hop Caucus. We have a bunch of Greenpeacers there. We had a real diverse group come together. We basically said, we've got Jane Fonda for 4 months. We didn't know it was actually going to be for the rest of her life. Back then it was for 4 months. We said, what should we do? And it was worth it to bring them all together. First of all, because ideas are better when you have lots of diverse perspectives there, but then all because they were part of it. So it wasn't just you doing something. It was a movement decision, a movement project.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that happened at that meeting was we figured out who this action was going to target. And we decided that we needed to target people who already knew, because there's so many of them in the United States. I mean, like 23 million people who know there's a terrible problem, but they haven't done anything about it. people who you don't have to convince there's a climate crisis. You just have to try to inspire them to get up and do something about it, right? That's who we were targeting. Do you want to talk about what our actions were?
So that's really important, because I remember when I first started working on climate 25 years ago, the conversation we had to have was to convince people there's a problem. You can totally skip that part now. People are ready. And if you think about the climate movement, we have every single thing we need except one thing. We have a model economic policies. We have incredible, innovative green technology. We have science. We have the morality of it. We have the economic art. We have every single thing except an engaged public movement demanding it. And we know, as you said, that people out there care. The majority of people in this country want government action and are waiting to understand what to do. So we saw this as a way to leverage the celebrity of Jane and her friends to really elevate the sense of urgency and provide an example to these folks for them to get up from being alone and angst-ridden to being together and active. And so that's what we did. We wanted to raise the sense of urgency, provide ways for people to get involved. And we landed on 3 key things that need to happen, because there are lots of ways you can fight the climate crisis, but the 3 most important things. Number 1, pass a Green New Deal. This was really important. And this was what inspired Jane to originally call us, pass a Green New Deal. And the Green New Deal will provide clean energy and good jobs and lots of things we need, but it's not the whole picture, because we also need to stop fossil fuels. And the Green New Deal, for all the beautiful, wonderful things it includes, doesn't include fossil fuels. So the winning combination is pass a Green New Deal, stop new fossil fuel expansion, stop making it worse, just like the science says, stop expanding it, and then start to phase it out with a just transition, which means taking care of the workers and communities who are dependent on fossil fuels. Green New Deal, no new fossil fuels, phase out the existing fossil fuels with a just transition. And we were off and running.
Right. I didn't understand how important it was that we put the fossil fuel issue front and center. I didn't really realize before I went to DC that so many environmentalists and environmental organizations, they talk about wind turbines and solar panels, but they don't talk about the cause of the problem. They don't talk about the root cause, fossil fuels. Because fossil fuels have so much money, people get scared, it's very controversial. So it was really important. It was very strategic for us to center the issue of fossil fuels. I was very keen on having each week focus on a different topic. How the climate crisis affects women. What is the relationship between the climate crisis and the Pentagon? Forests, oceans, water, jobs, all of those things. And so it became a real learning experience for a lot of people. Thursday night before the Friday drill, we would have a teach-in that was filmed on a little phone, and it ended up reaching tens of thousands of people. It was a first experience for me. It's very funny sitting about 5 feet from this tiny little iPhone and thinking that I'm talking to actually 50,000 people out there. It took some getting used to, right?
Right. You wanted to first have it in a theater, remember?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then Carla Aronson was the one that said, we can do it digitally. We can do it. Who were the people? What was the name of the organization that helped us?
There were two groups helped enormously. One was DC Action Lab. We call them DCAL. They are the people you call if you want to have a big rally or action or creative thing in Washington, DC, you call DC Action Lab. And then Cultivate Strategies were the ones that made the live stream. So the teach-in and the whole rallies themselves reached not just tens of thousands. By the end, it was hundreds of thousands of people every week were joining us via the live stream who couldn't be there in person.
Yeah. And then we all decided that one of the things that was absolutely critical to Fire Drill Fridays was civil disobedience. Do you want to talk about that, Annie?
Yeah, I was so glad, Jane, that you came into this discussion with such a strong commitment to civil disobedience. If you look throughout history at major social movements, every time that we have had a real leap forward on women's rights, on voting rights, on all different kinds of issues, there has been an element of civil disobedience. Civil disobedience can change the political calculation. It changes the context. People often say, of course we should stop fossil fuels, but it's not politically possible. It is through civil disobedience that we change that political reality and make things that seemed impossible possible. And when it comes to climate, I want folks to realize we didn't start with doing civil disobedience. We have spent decades doing polite advocacy. We have written reports and done incredible research and made films and documentaries and written books and testified in front of Congress and gotten millions of signatures on petitions. Like, we have literally exhausted every lever that democracy offers us. And we aren't getting change anywhere near what the science demands. And so it's not that it was just our choice to do civil disobedience. We are at this point morally compelled to do civil disobedience because nothing else is working. And we're going to need a lot of people doing civil disobedience. So we included it every week in Fire Drill Fridays as a way to introduce the concept and normalize it, because that we're going to actually need mass civil disobedience to force our leaders to lead. So that's why we included the civil disobedience.
Yeah.
Yeah, the new norm.
And, you know, I must say that watching the people who came, and of course the numbers kept growing and they came from all over the country, and including my celebrity friends, they had never engaged in civil disobedience before. They'd never been arrested before, and they found it transformative. I mean, and that's exactly what we wanted, right? We wanted people who had never done that and who were ready to take that next step, and that is who we were reaching. And I felt so proud of the role of the celebrities that came. You know, we had the celebrities, for the most part, introduce the frontline activists, the people whose voices never get heard, the people who are living in the midst of the climate crisis right now in Houston, in Louisiana, in California, and all over the country, where the fossil fuel industry is destroying their communities with pollution and carcinogens. They're called sacrifice zones. These people have such stories to tell, and they don't usually get an international audience to hear them speak, because there was always so many cameras and journalists that came to the Fire Drill Fridays from all over the world. So these frontline activists were able to have a real platform, and the journalists showed up because of the celebrity. So it was a win-win. And I want to tell a couple of stories that I think are so cute. It was like less than a week before the first Fire Drill Friday, and we had no name for the action. And we all, I don't know if you were there, Annie, but the team met in a room. And by the way, a documentary was made of about the whole Fire Drill Friday from beginning to end, and they were filming us in this meeting, and we kept throwing out ideas, and we just couldn't come up with a name that we really wanted. And we'd been in that room for an hour or two, and we gave up. We said, okay, let's pack it up and we'll get together tomorrow. Maybe we'll be fresher. And as everybody was packing up, Greg, our sound guy, took off his earphones and he said, "What about Fire Drill Fridays?" And we looked at each other and was like, that's it. So it was our sound guy that came up with the name. And then the other thing that happened was we needed an artist to do our posters every week, focusing on the particular topic that we were doing. And so we found this young Vietnamese student named Vivu. And I talked to her on the phone to introduce myself and tell her what we were looking for. And I asked her where in Vietnam she was from, and she said Hanoi. And I said, "Oh, I've been there a few times." And she said, "You have? Why?" And I just thought, oh my God, that really was a long time ago. This young girl wasn't even alive then. She has no idea that I'm still called Hanoi Jane in some circles. It was a very, very funny moment. But then, you see, Fridays had already been claimed by Fridays for Future and the Sunrise Movement. There were young people who had been protesting at the White House for a year, Jerome Foster, for example, and others. And so it was very important to meet with the young climate strikers. And about a dozen of them came over to the headquarters. And then after our meeting, I took them all to dinner. That's a picture of all of us at dinner. Oh my God, there they all are. They were so smart, so strategic. They just blew me away. Some of them had been out there for a whole year, and a good number of them spoke at the Fire Drill Fridays. So the day came for the first one just about a year ago. I was so scared. I felt like I've thrown a party and nobody's going to come. I hardly slept that night. We gathered in a room in a church, and there weren't very many people, but Naomi Klein was there. The wonderful scientist, the biologist, Sandra Stein-Graber, and some indigenous kids were there, Sebi and others. And what we did always, either, in various churches around the city in preparation for going to the stage, was we were given instructions, and then we would be asked to meditate, to go inside our bodies for a few minutes. And then, because we were going to be putting our bodies on the line, for us, one of our staffers said, now we made a noise. It was like a martial arts noise to kind of fortify ourselves. So then we walked out the door. I just want to read this passage from my book. Flanked by the speakers and friends, holding the Fire Drill Friday signs with our 3 demands, I stepped out into the warm, welcoming day. I felt tears running down my cheeks. Here we go. We were met by a phalanx of television cameras and photographers walking backwards as they filmed us, marching and chanting. There were more of them than there were of us. The interviews Ira had arranged for me to do with big media outlets had clearly generated attention. As we crossed the intersection between the Supreme Court and the Capitol, their majestic columns and curves spoke to me of history and of moral authority. Would that the goings-on inside right then matched these imposing facades. The impressive buildings added to the feeling that our little group was ragtag and inconsequential. Our chants lacked confidence, and there weren't enough of us to make a lot of noise anyway. At the stage where our banner was erected, I could see our supporters, sparse, 50 at most. Well, it was a start, and hopefully the media coverage and our live stream of the rally would expand our reach. We didn't know, Annie and I really didn't know if this was going to catch on, right?
But that's part of being an activist. You got to take risks. You got to try new things. Lots of things don't work, but that's okay. You learned that didn't work. You could do something different. So I remember walking out there. It was a very little crowd, but that didn't last long.
No, it didn't
got big quickly.
And then we got arrested. And this was my first time being arrested for civil disobedience, I must say. And I'm standing there holding the sign. Next to me, the young girl holding the sign up with blue jeans. That's my step granddaughter. I watched her being born. And I was so moved that she came and showed up to be with us on this first Fire Drill Fridays. And and next to me is Sandra Stein-Graber. She had made a speech. We had 2 indigenous student activists and then a biologist, Sandra, who spoke. And her way of looking at the fossil fuel issue really moved me. She said, well, I can't find it in my notes, but anyway. She said, the bodies of marine animals that died 400 years ago are being weaponized to destroy the bodies of sea creatures living in our oceans today. And that really hit me. I hadn't thought, I had forgotten that fossil fuel is made of fossils, which were formerly marine animals and others. So she just blew me away. And she was in my cell with me also, along with my granddaughter. But the civil disobedience, when I had the handcuffs put on, it's funny because you have no control anymore. You're completely in the control of the police. And yet it felt so liberating, so empowering to to have put my whole body on the line for my values, for the climate crisis. And, you know, I understand that because I'm famous and white, I was treated differently. We were all treated differently. It's not the same for people of color. I understand that, but it felt really, really good to have committed civil disobedience, to have risked being arrested. It was pretty funny when the cop, he actually put my handcuffs behind me. And so I didn't have it hands free. And then I tried to get into the police wagon. There was nothing to hold on to, even if I had hands. And I couldn't step up that high. So the cop took my butt and hoisted me into the van. It felt very Grace, as in Grace and Frankie. It was a funny experience.
On that picture of all of us getting arrested, I just want to point out some of the other folks who were there. And this is an example to what a sort of movement-minded project this was from the beginning. We had Wendy Fields, the director of the Democracy Initiative, is there. Carol Muffett, the director of the Center for International Environmental Law. Steve Kretzman, who founded Oil Change International, and then a bunch of labor activists from the Labor Network for Sustainability. That alone is a phenomenal thing, to have democracy, legal, science, policy, labor, climate groups all together. And that was exactly what the moment needed. So that was amazing to have them all there. Jane, when you're looking back and you think about those early Fire Drill Fridays, what do you remember about the crowd? What surprised you about it?
Oh, well, I noticed early on that it was maybe 2/3 women and mostly older women. And I kind of understood that because older women tend to get feistier. We tend to get braver. And what the hell do we have to lose? So it made sense to me. Also, women have a more intense relationship, I think, with the earth. Well, research shows that women care more about the climate crisis than men do. So it didn't, well, it did surprise me. The extent to which women outnumbered men surprised me. It surprised me that people kept coming back and back and back. And as I looked at the crowd getting bigger and bigger, people coming from all over the country, I realized we're building community. They're coming back not just because they care about the climate, but because they feel they're part of a community. You know, we don't have enough community these days. The notion of individualism has been put on a pedestal. The word collective has been made negative by the current right-wingers, and we're losing the sense of interconnectedness. But women have that more than men do. We are less vulnerable to the disease of individualism. So building community was such an important part of Fire Drill Fridays.
I think that's true. There's also a lot of friendships made at Fire Drill Fridays where people are still together. I hear now from people who met each other at Fire Drill Fridays and are still carrying on in their new friendships.
Yeah, I love it. Alexandra, I think, is an example. I know both of us, both you, Annie, and I often asked people in the crowd, and then after we were arrested in the holding pen, if they had ever done anything like it before. And so many people, the majority of them said no, they had never been arrested before, and that they found it empowering.
Yeah, that was one thing that surprised me. I'm not used to protests where so many people it was their first time doing it, which again was our goal in this, is inviting people into the movement. But you know, that changed over time. When we'd say, how many people is this the first time you've risked arrest? They'd raise their hands. And then it was less towards the end. And that was because it was the same people coming back again and again. So we said, outside of Fire Drill Fridays, how many of you was it the first time? And it was almost everybody. Jane,
and they were manicurists, they were teachers, they were nurses, they were therapists, they were nuns, they were writers, students, there were just all kinds of people who kept coming from all over the country.
Yeah, a lot of nurses, I remember that. When did you realize this is going to work? When did you shed that nervousness that you had at the beginning?
I remember vividly walking into that church room the first week of November and saying, I think this is working. I think I could feel it in my body that we had turned a corner and that it was taking off. That was the that was the Friday that we focused on women in the climate. And that was Rosanna Arquette and Catherine Keener, my pals from Big Sur, who were there when I first had the idea. They came, I'll never forget, and joined me for that one. And it was around that same time that we decided that, given the interest that was all over, people from all over the country saying, we want to do this in our town, that we should take it national and that I should write a book, right? It was around then.
Yeah, but we're not the ones who originally thought of that. We got inundated with emails from people saying, can I do this in all these different places around the country and even internationally? So others had the idea, let's take it national, before we even did.
Right, right. And oh my God, then on December 20th, which was the day before my 82nd birthday, we focused on health and climate. And Gloria Steinem, Dolores Huerta from the farm workers, Heather McTeer-Toney with Moms for Clean Air, Ai-jen Poo with the National Alliance for Domestic Workers. There's Reverend William Barber, the Poor People's Campaign. And there's my Buddhist teacher, Rashi Joan Halifax. All these people were there together marching in support of the climate. It was so, I don't know, I just felt so happy. It was the best birthday party I ever had. And remember, we marched to the Hart Building, and there were so many of us. And Reverend Barber started singing.
Oh yeah, I remember. Filled the whole building, the whole atrium.
And, you know, the Hart Building, there's all the floors and there's balconies all around. And we could see that there were Fire Drill Friday signs in some of the office windows, and people were leaning over the balcony. You know, this was a Senate building, and all these people were paying attention to what we were doing. It was, see, look, that photograph on the left, that was the original time. That was the first time that we went to the Hart Building. And the other one was the second time we went to the Hart Building. And look how the crowd has grown bigger.
Right, and there were hundreds more that didn't want to participate in the civil disobedience, but were standing all around.
That's right.
That's a good birthday party.
That was my best birthday party I ever had.
I remember when we were all in the jail and police kept coming over and saying, Miss Fonda, happy birthday, because you'd gotten to know so many of them. You asked them, how are your children? You'd gotten to know them all by then.
And then, of course, the time came when I had to come back to California because of Grace and Frankie. And I was really depressed because the experience for 4 months in DC was just fantastic. I think it was the happiest time of my life. It really was. I will look back over my life when I come to the end of it, and I will know that Washington for those 4 months was the happiest time. But we had to go back to California. But you also live in California, Annie. You were very upbeat, and you wanted me to understand why California is so strategic when it comes to the climate crisis. And so Annie arranged a Zoom call. I'd never even heard of such a thing, and I had never experienced a Zoom call. I was just floored. And tell about what that meeting was.
I want to tell about that, but before we leave DC, there's one more thing I want to ask you about, which is jail support. You have mentioned jail support. Can you just quickly tell what jail support is, and then we'll jump back to California?
Oh, yeah. Well, the first time that I was arrested, I was the last one to be released. And I didn't know how much time had elapsed. And I came out of the police building into the bright sunlight, and there was the whole team with apples and water and tangerine and nuts. I said, what? Oh, that's so sweet of you. No. They said, no, this is not just for you. This is jail support. Jail support's a thing. When people engage in civil disobedience and risk arrest when they come out of jail, their friends and the supporters and the organization are there to welcome them out and give them some good tasting things. And, you know, after 5 arrests, I couldn't keep getting arrested because I risked having to stay in jail for months. So I became part of jail support. And it was really, I realized that my role was just as important as getting arrested, because I could hug everybody. I think I built a movement hug by hug, one hug at a time. We built the Fire Drill Friday. Oh, there's my grandson and my granddaughter. See me with the hat covering my gray hair that's growing in. There's my grandson. He's at RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. My daughter, Vanessa, my granddaughter, Viva. They all got arrested with me. In fact, Vanessa came 3 times. My grandkids had never been arrested before. It made them feel so good. But jail support was great. See, there's Lily. I just hugged everybody that came out, and then we would talk and I'd find out who they were and what they'd been. It was really, I didn't only hug celebrities, I swear. That's Joaquin, in case you don't recognize him. It was kind of much more interesting. There's a Greenpeacer over there, right? Is that?
Yeah, there's Rolf Scar and there's Lindsay Allen, 2 Greenpeacers.
Right. Yeah. It was fun. I loved doing that.
I think that's important because not everybody has to or chooses to or can or feels comfortable actually putting their body on the line to do civil disobedience, but there's lots of other things we can do too. That's why I wanted to make sure we shared that. Some people can risk arrest. Others can make sandwiches for those risking arrest. Others can provide childcare for those risking arrest. Others can provide legal services for those who got arrested. Others can provide art. I mean, there really is a place for everybody with all different kinds of skill sets in this.
Yeah, that's really important to say. You know, yes, I did the Ellen show and Tiffany Haddish was the guest host. And, you know, I had tried to get Tiffany Haddish to come and join us. And she said yesterday, I can't get arrested, not going to get arrested. Well, she's a Black woman and she has a whole different relationship to the police, right? But I should have invited her to come to do jail support. You wouldn't have had to get arrested, right?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to be involved. All right, but let's go back to California because I was so excited. I remember you were so bummed that we were going back to California. I was like, this is great because on so many ways, California is incredibly strategic around climate. California is a gigantic, enormous oil and gas producer. And a lot of people don't realize that because you think of Teslas and solar panels, but we are one of the biggest oil and gas producing states in the country. And lots of people, millions of people are living right by these oil and gas wells and breathing this stuff in every day, horrible pollution. And California has everything we need to do this right? We have really high public support for environmental causes here in California. So the public will have the back of the leaders. We have wealth, we have innovation, we have entrepreneurship. Like if we cannot get California to stop expanding oil and gas and transition, we are in bad shape. But the thing is we can. And so there's a very vibrant movement in California. It's called the Last Chance Alliance. There's over 750 organizations that collaborate. And when I told the Last Chance Alliance, we could bring the energy of Fire Drill Fridays to California, get California to move, which would then cause ripple effects. The whole rest of the country would move. It was a fantastic opportunity.
We were welcomed with so many open arms. Oh my God. The turnout was amazing. We had one in Los Angeles in front of City Hall. It was huge. And then did a march to an oil company office to commit civil disobedience. Norman Lear in his 90s was among the people who came with us. How amazing is that? Risking arrest. And then we did one down in Wilmington, where the oil wells are right next to homes, right next to schools and playgrounds and the refineries and the incinerators. And there were 2 speakers in particular that struck me and made me feel so proud. Naleli Kobo, for example, she was 13, 14 years old. She had cancer of her reproductive organs because she lived in the middle of what they call a sacrifice zone. She lived with all the pollution from the oil drilling and the fracking and the refinery. And then there was Don, I think Don Martin is his name.
Yeah.
He wore a vial on a chain around his neck with the ashes of his wife who had died of cancer because of the oil wells and the pollution. They were, people in the audience were just crying. it made me feel so good that they had been given a platform with a wide audience to hear what it is that they go through.
I think that is such an important thing, that we kept that through line from DC, that we had all the celebrities there to draw the attention, to draw the crowd, to draw the cameras, but it wasn't really about the celebrities. I mean, Jane, you are a wonderful leader of Fire Drill Fridays, but it's not even about you. It's about all these people, as you well know, who are living on the front lines. And the way that Fire Drill Fridays centered their voices, I think is part of what has made this so incredibly powerful. In Wilmington, which is a small city right on the outside of LA, where all of these oil and gas wells are, we just saw a photograph where there's literally oil wells right next to people's homes and playgrounds and schools. It's right next to LA, and so many people from LA don't even know that it's there. There's this incredible toxic hotspot that they don't even know exists. Huge crowd in Wilmington, right outside the offices of some elected officials that the activists had been pushing on to create a health and safety buffer around homes and schools. A number of people said it was the biggest rally they'd ever seen in Wilmington. One woman who lived there came up to me. She literally was crying. She was so grateful. And she said this was more people coming and caring about Wilmington and standing with them than they had ever had in her lifetime. It was such a great example of leveraging celebrity and all the resources a group like Greenpeace can bring to focus on a real environmental justice violation.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
And then COVID hit. And we were real worried because, you know, we knew we could take it online and do Fire Drill Fridays the way we're doing it now virtually. But we didn't know whether people would still be concerned about the climate in the face of this terrible pandemic. And so this Zoom that had been brand new only weeks before has become my go-to, my new home. And what has really impressed us and moved us, and we're so grateful, is that the numbers of people joining us keep growing. And even though the numbers are huge, I can still, you know, it's almost like my social media. Oh yeah, there's me. This is where I am. This is where I do my Fire Drill Fridays from, in my basement. And it's like my social media platform now, because I see all the names that come in. I'm getting to know them. I feel like they're my friends and all the volunteers whose names I know. And so it really feels like a real community. And it makes me so happy, I can't tell you.
It is a real community. And we were nervous of how do we keep that strong social ties. And, you know, we used to have, at the beginning, we were low Zoom and high hugs. Now we're high Zoom and low hugs. We're like, how are we going to keep this going? But it is working because of all of you that watch. Just listen to some of these numbers, which are amazing to us. The total number of people who have watched Fire Drill Fridays since we were forced to go online only is 6.2 million people. The average number of views on each one of these Friday live streams that we have is over 225,000 people. So that's all of you watching this and the friends and family that you've invited. We're now reaching over 1 million people a month. And the thing is, that's great, but we're not just a media company. We're not just trying to get people to join us online. We want action, because that's what's going to make a difference. And so the cool thing is how many of you watching have signed up to volunteer. And if you haven't yet, please do. There is still time. So far, we've had 15,000 people sign up for our volunteer community that are actively engaging with us, with Fire Drill Fridays and with Greenpeace. We do all different kinds of things. Right now, we're focusing on getting out the climate vote. It is so important that we get somebody in every elected office who understands climate and is movable, so that our protests are making a difference. And these 15,000 people have, just over the last couple of months, made over 12,000 calls to people to get them out to vote. If that sounds intimidating, don't worry. We have systems that we will train you. We set you up. We make it so easy. And so volunteers are calling voters or else texting them. We have sent 1.6 million texts. You don't have to do that on your phone. We have a system on the computer to do that. We also are sending postcards. We're having volunteers send postcards because that's been proven to excite people to vote. We've sent over 5,700 postcards so far. All of these are going to people that we believe will concerned about the climate for different reasons. We know they're concerned about the climate, reminding them to own their power by voting. And that kind of stuff has a real impact. So great you're all watching us, but also join us in taking action. We've accomplished so much. The part in DC, we accomplished a huge amount. The small time in California, we accomplished a huge amount, but we are still accomplishing a huge amount. If you do want to join us to volunteer for a volunteer base, go to firedrillfridays.com/vote. That's firedrillfridays.com/vote. And then we will plug you into our community and get you all connected. And again, there's lots of guides. It's not like we just give you a bunch of phone numbers and say, call. We will set you up. One of the communities that we're especially reaching out to is the Latinx community, because the data shows that within the whole United States, the community that is most engaged and most concerned about climate is the Latinx community. And within that, especially Spanish speakers. We might be surprised about that. That's the community most engaged. So we're developing tools specifically to reach out to the Latinx community. I want to show you just one of the many examples that we have. We have a little live stream podcast that we call Planeta Hey that is reaching out to Latinx folks. We're going to show a short video of that right now, I think.
Hola, Jane. We're wearing red just for you. Thanks so much for supporting Planeta Hey.
Planeta Hey is a bi-weekly web series on Greenpeace USA on Instagram and on YouTube. It's basically a show that takes a look at the environmental movement, but from a Latinx lens.
It's funny because like recycling and taking care of the environment, it's seen as this like very, white people thing. But it's like, no, I mean, Latinos have been trying to take care of the environment for a very long time. We just don't talk about it in the same way.
Me encanta tu guampa, salud.
I think that it's important to fight for environmental issues because, as a matter of fact, this is one of those issues that is going to affect us predominantly and that you should care about because it's going to affect you and your family.
Let's call your mom. Yeah, I was just about to say, let's call my mom.
Que me lo expliquen la verdad porque hay en el mundo cosas que están sucediendo y desconocemos los significados.
I've never been on any sort of interview where it was talking about climate change from like a Latinx perspective. It's really refreshing and it's really nice. Thank you so much for creating this space. It's so necessary and I'm just so happy that it exists. So muchas gracias.
You can tune in every other Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific to keep up with us.
We can't wait to see you there. Ciao.
Adios.
How great was that? I love seeing Jamie, my friend Jamie Marlin there, and I loved seeing them drinking mate. Most of you probably don't know what mate is, but because I've spent time in South America, I know what it is. Maddie, do we have any questions?
We sure do. So we're doing things a little bit differently for today's anniversary fireside. So I'm actually going to be sharing some kudos and questions from our dear friends and past Fire Drill Fridays participants. So first we have Kaya Chatterjee, who was with us from day one at the Greenpeace DC office. And Kaya says, what I admire most about you is that when you see an injustice, instead of thinking someone should do something about that, you read books, educate yourself, reach out to friends, and get up and do something big about it. Congratulations on the 1 year of Fire Drill Fridays. And Kaya wants to know, how did you convince so many celebrities to get involved in Fire Drill Fridays with you?
A lot of celebrities really care about the climate. And just like me, they needed to be encouraged with something concrete to do. And it was like they were waiting to be asked. Also, Maddie does a very good job. For a long time, she's been working with celebrities in relation to Greenpeace. So between the two of us, it went pretty well.
Thanks, Jane. So next we have Karen Nussbaum and Ira Arlook, dear Fire Drill Fridays friends, who say, you're still fighting after 50 years, combining the strength of knowledge, the leverage of celebrity, and the power of organization. Brava, you're one of a kind. They'd like to know, you've always courageously fought the destructive power of big corporations from as far back as Vietnam to today's battle over climate change. What's the same and what's different in these fights?
Keep the photo there for a second, could you? Would you put the photo back? Karen, I just want you all to know, I've known both of them since 1972 when we were together in the anti-war movement. Karen founded 9 to 5, the National Association of Women Office Workers, and she is the one that inspired me to create the movie 9 to 5. Her husband, Ira, did all of our media and did such a great job. It's one of the reasons that we really took off, is because there was so much publicity about what we were doing. They are dear, dear friends that go back 50 years plus. So what was the same and what was different? Well, we were dealing with an out of control president. That would be Richard Nixon. We were just as passionate then as now. We felt that we were fighting for the future of the world and of democracy and of the United States. The state was killing Black people, the police, there was a lot of violence against Black people. The US was bombing Asians in Vietnam. And sort of like with Fire Drill Fridays, the organization that Ira and Karen and Tom Hayden and I were very much a part of, the Indochina Peace Campaign, our focus was Middle America, working class people, and we combined mass education, mobilization with a legislative strategy. So that's kind of like Fire Drill Fridays. What was different is the movements like the women's movement and then it was called Gay Liberation Movement. They were very separate. Identity politics. Today, there's much more of a feeling of organic intersectionality, that just organically people have left their silos behind and joined together, understanding that all of our issues are interrelated. That's one of the most important things that's happened now. Social media, of course, has made a big difference. It's much easier to organize things now with social media, and much more women in leadership roles now than there was back then.
Great. So now from Mark Magana, who joined us for a rally and a more recent fireside. Jane, you have repeatedly risked your career, your reputation, your health, and your safety for the sake of others and for the benefit of society and the world. Thank you. And Mark would like to know, you've been front and center in so many historical moments that have occurred in your lifetime. Why does the climate crisis grab you now and demand that you yet again stand up and take it on?
Because the climate crisis is the existential question. Is there going to be a livable future or not? I mean, this is it. This is the biggest challenge that has ever confronted humankind, because it will determine whether the planet is livable. And I know that I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life for that reason.
Thanks, Jane. Now from our dear friend Saket Soni. Jane, I am so lucky to have connected with you this past year. You are the model of a happy warrior, a joyous rebel, a lifelong student, a grateful teacher. Thank you for Fire Drill Fridays. Jane, you've been an activist and a fighter for justice all your life, but did this last year change you in some way? Did getting arrested in DC have a shaping or formative impact on you?
Oh, I'm not depressed anymore. I said at the beginning, I was really depressed before going to DC because I knew I wasn't doing enough and I didn't know what to do. So I'm over that. I don't think I'll ever be depressed again. I've learned about movement manners from Annie. I don't think I paid enough attention to that before. I have been awakened to the realization that the young climate strikers are very, very savvy, very strategic, very passionate. And I'm just really, really grateful to have had this opportunity that continues, by the way.
Great. So now we have just a couple of congratulations from Lily Tomlin, Sam Waterston, and Dr. Sandra Steingraber. Lily Tomlin says, congrats to Jane Fonda for the great success and inspiration she has brought to the world with her Fire Drill Fridays. She has created a place for us to support each other and to work together to get the information and knowledge we need to affect change in this decade. And our most imperative duty is to heed her words and join Fire Drill Fridays. Sam Waterston says, by your life and energy for good, you show all of us what we think we can do is not a particle of the potential in us. That's much needed news. Congrats to you, Jane and Fire Drill Fridays. And Sandra Steingraber. Jane, what I deeply appreciate about Fire Drill Fridays is the way in which you bring together a constellation of diverse voices at the teach-ins, in the streets, and now in your book that chronicles it all. Fire Drill Fridays opens a space for all of us to find our own answers. And the three of them had the same question for you, a very popular question. What motivates you and drives you to do all of this hard work? And where do you get the power to do this day after day and year after year?
It's so much fun. I mean, if it was a drag and it wasn't fun and there wasn't joy attached to it, I don't think I could keep it up. But we all want to know why we're alive, right? We all want to know what is the meaning of our life. We all know that we don't want to die without understanding what we were here for. And when you're part of a movement, not alone, but with other people, and you're doing something that you know in your heart is very, very important, your life has meaning. And you're with people who share your values, so it's fun. And loneliness and depression disappears. On top of that, I stay healthy, right? I'm careful to sleep enough. I eat well. I take care of myself. Self-care is very, very important for activists. We can't let ourselves burn out. And then on top of that, just being able to work with people like Annie and the team from Greenpeace. I feel enclosed, embedded in a warm, loving circle of very, very smart, talented, committed people. So I just feel very lucky.
Thank you, Jane. And our last kudos and question is from Jerome Foster, who of course has been with us since day one, a fabulous youth climate striker. Jerome says, thank you so much for forging what is now one of the most powerful intersectional adult-led climate initiatives in the world. Fire Drill Fridays has allowed for young climate activists like myself to begin to regain hope in the fact that our future can be saved and that intergenerational solidarity does not have to mean compromising on our values. Let's keep pushing. Happy 1-year anniversary.
Oh.
Jerome's question for you. What lessons have you learned from founding the Fire Drill Fridays movement?
The importance of movement manners, the importance of being very clear about your theory of change and making sure that what you're doing follows your theory of change. The importance of civil disobedience. I've realized that more than ever. Those are some of the things, but I think we're running out of time. So we're gonna, Maddie, thank you. Thank you. I hope that all of you watching have had a good time as we've taken you through down memory lane, the history of Fire Drill Fridays. Thanks, Annie. You who were so instrumental, you and Greenpeace, in building Fire Drill Fridays into a successful movement, and all of you out there that you're the ones that make the movement. You are the movement. Maybe even an historic movement if we can mobilize in great enough numbers to make the government do what's needed. I hope you all realize, all of you out there, that we're still going to be together a year from now. I ain't going anywhere. And the climate crisis is going to have to be fought for a long time before we're out of the woods. So I hope and pray that you will hang in with us, please. Stay with us. We're going to continue to build this movement. And when the pandemic is over, hopefully we will meet each other. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. I'll see you next week.